Wisconsin Airlines sold its fleet of aircraft to two other companies last month. That deal, finalized on January 19th, brought in about $110 million. As a result, Harbor Diversified Incorporated, which owned the fleet, no longer owns any assets to support the airline. The company does have non-operational assets related to lease payments for a single aircraft. After the sale was finished, two executives from Air Wisconsin were appointed to Harbor Diversified's board of directors. The president of Air Wisconsin also released from the company as part of that deal.